have you. One of the things that Franz and I were able to find out is that you had worked with Stephen King on Tales of Suspense. Could you kind of break that down and let us know how that came about and what that was like for you?
Well, I was publishing, I was a fan, as they say, and I sent a letter to Mystery in Space. And Julie Schwartz, who was the editor of Mystery in Space at the time, always printed everyone's address, something nobody else did. But he printed the address as a way of getting the fans to communicate with each other. Within a week or so after the comic came out, I got 2 fanzines sent to me. That's how they built up the fans. So, you know, the people who were doing fanzines at the time, which were the amateur fan magazines, would find other fans and send it to them, send a copy in with the idea that maybe they will subscribe and pay for them. You know, the first one's free. So I started publishing my own fanzines. And I published a superhero fanzine called Super Adventures, and I published a horror mystery fanzine called Stories of Suspense, and I published a funny animal one called The Foob, and an opinion fanzine, which was sort of like the comment sections of today's internet. And a friend of mine said, because I was looking for material beyond what I wrote, to be in there, and a friend of mine had said he knew somebody who did a good story for another fanzine, but they didn't publish the whole thing right away. And he sent it to me, and it was by some kid named Stephen King. He was a teenager, you know.
Yeah.
He wrote a story called I Was a Teenage Grave Robber. And I liked it, and I published it. I had not met him. It was all through the mail. You know, I think he did fairly well for himself.
That's a fascinating question, because it says that, first of all, you were enterprising from the very, you know, you were an entrepreneur. You were someone who was destined for greatness very, very early on.
Or plummeting to failure. It could have been either way.
Well, actually, no, absolutely not. Because
fortunately, it wasn't.
The question I have is, does Stephen King remember that story, and do you have any kind of relationship with him now?
Yeah, there's a couple of funny things with that. Later on, I was an editor at Warren magazines for a brief time. He did Creepy Eerie and Vampirella. And Stephen King found out that I was the editor there, and he sent me some stories, hoping, because I published the stuff in my fanzines that I published that. Now, what he didn't know at the time was I had already left Warren, and they did not forward his stories to me or anything. And the person who followed me into that job never got back to him. They weren't paying, I mean, they were paying really bad rates,
Sure.
but still. And so he always thought I just sort of ignored him or something. And as opposed to what it was. So he mentioned that to me, and I said, no, I just never got it. But it worked out, because you think about it, if I had stayed at Warren, because we were only paying $25 for a story that was so much less than everybody else, I mean, unbelievably less, I would have bought it, because it wasn't that much money. The story was fine, and you need material. And if I bought it, he would have probably gotten into comics, and he'd be, you know, instead of the most successful writer in history, he'd be out of work as a comic book writer now. So, you know, I think he should pay me for not buying his story.
Look, the dynamic duo.